Today we're going to discuss the BRICS taking over the world, and don't underestimate what this means. Very interesting information has come to light of what's transpiring, and I'm going to review some of this and then end it with explaining why the dollar is basically dying, and we are just in this cycle of life. Just happens to be a time and season that I really believe if we, the people, stay focused and know this is coming and do the right things, we can maybe prevent a lot of misery into our life as we try to either transform into it or save it. I'm not exactly sure where America is going to go. We're a pretty apathetic nation. We don't really seem to care about the egregious, massive moral violation and truth and rule of law violation that takes place in our nation. But I still have hope that we can wake up. But this is a really big deal. Russia has just come out and announced that there are going to be another 12 more countries that want to join the BRICS. Now, remember, BRICS is the initial organization that was made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And it was just really kind of a block. A group of countries coming together and forming more or less like a trade and an understanding and agreement. But ever since the war in Ukraine and the West going through sanctions to Russia, we have basically created a multipolar world. We were a unipolar world where the dollar was the dominant currency. And a little later in this podcast, I'm going to get to why that's ending right now. And it's on the slippery slope and quickly. But we were the dominant reserve currency. And then once we did this with Russia, and believe me, we did it. There's no doubt about it. We pushed the buttons. We forced the hand. And now we have the sanctions forcing the split in the world. And the world is now splitting. We're fractioning. Well, it's almost really half of the world. Right now, if all these countries are accepted into the BRICS, they're going to control 50% of the world population. And even, this is the big part here, a larger share of commodities such as oil, gas, metals, rare earth metals. Now, just understand silver. This is why you're seeing a big problem in the silver supply chain. I know apparently people are hearing a lot of video on YouTube about the silver supply. And the reason is Russia was the main supplier for the London Bullion Exchange, and Mexico was the big supplier for the United States COMEX exchange. Well, now that the sanctions are in Russia, doesn't look like it's lifting anytime soon. Russia no longer sends its silver to the West. It's now probably sending it to China and India. Now that that's taken place, the London exchange is in trouble. So they're going to have to compete with the American COMEX for the Mexican silver. And the reason that's important in America on the COMEX, when people were standing for physical delivery of these futures contracts that are 5,000 ounces per contract, the COMEX couldn't deliver. There's only 34 million ounces in the COMEX right now. And believe me, it sounds like a lot, but it's not. That could be gone within days. So the COMEX in America was sending their either exchange for physical, the EFPs, over to London, and they were allowing London to do the fulfillment. Well, now London's kind of in trouble because they're no longer getting the supply from Russia. So this is a really big deal because it's not just silver, of course, but that's why you're seeing, by the way, the issue in silver, and it's going to become a problem. I think the exchanges are potentially on default where you're going to see price spikes like you wouldn't believe. But the bigger issue is not just silver. These BRIC nations are going to form a block. Now, if you see the map, there's the proposed BRIC expansion. It's pretty stark map where it's predominantly South America. And then you have, of course, South Africa, and then you have multiple nations in Africa. You have a chunk of the Middle East. I know Saudi Arabia's already made interest. Egypt's already made interest. Of course, you have India, and then you have a lot in the South Pacific, these island nations. And then you have, of course, China, Russia. But when you see the map, you realize real quick that the United States and Europe, and so far anyway, Australia, are isolated. And so you're dealing with 50, probably upwards to 60% of the world's population is going to be in the BRICS. So now we're a multipolar world where you have the BRIC nations forming, and believe me, they're going to form their own currency too. They're going to start doing business outside the dollar, is why I'm going to wrap up with what's going on in the dollar. But the bigger part is their currency is going to be backed by commodities. These are the nations that have commodities. Europe does not have commodities. I think Europe has basically precision technology. I don't know, maybe some good pastries and chocolate, but Europe doesn't have anything. The United States does, but as you can see from the political left, the destruction, the proposed and actual destruction of the American infrastructure, the energy infrastructure. They want to take everyone to electric, which is lunacy. I love the idea of having it as an option if you want to, but we're far from perfecting that, and good luck if there's any form of EMP or hack. But the point is the infrastructure is not there, and they're destroying it. That's why we have issues in diesel fuel. We do have some commodity, but nothing like the BRICS. The BRICS control a vast majority of commodities and oil and natural gas and these rare earth minerals, rare earth metals that are absolutely essential to weaponry, to satellites, to cell phones, technology. China controls it. And by the way, China controls literally over 90% of all the elements necessary for electric car batteries. And for those people considering an electric vehicle, good luck if the battery goes bad. You know that's like a $20,000, $25,000 repair. But China controls those elements. So here we've forced the world. We were dominant in the world. Now we've split it in half, where the bulk of the world that controls what's necessary in natural resources and commodities are now forming away from the dollar hegemony, away from the Europeans, and yet the Chinese are the ones that control all of the elements for electric car batteries, let alone if you knew how much silver was needed for electric cars. So not only does China control that, they control a vast of the manufacturing as well as things like medication. So God forbid we actually go to war with China, or at least have some kind of tiff with them, because they better be nice enough to continue sending medication, considering 40% of America is on some psychotropic drug. Our nation could go nuts. But this is a really big deal. The BRICS are making the move. They are very methodical about it. This isn't going back. The dollar has blown apart the idea of the supply chain. They have blown apart the hegemony. They have blown apart the moral leadership that America and the dollar was doing. They're going to figure out how to do a currency. You can bet on it. And it's going to be commodity backed. And this is a really, really big deal, because the dollar is dying. It is dying in ways most people do not understand. But let me get into explain just a little bit, and this is why it's so important to prepare yourself with investments that are tangible based, that will actually hold value as the dollar collapses. And I know the dollar seems strong right now. The world is doing it as a parity. Of course, the other day, the dollar collapsed pretty good. But wait, that dollar is coming off because it's not real, and you're going to find out. You can go to a website. It's pretty fascinating, but it's called priceingold.com. There you can check the real cost of commodities. They're cheap when you price it in gold. Goods and services are cheap when you price it in gold. If you think about it, this is how much we've inflated the currency, like the US dollar, the euro, all of it's going to be going out. You'll see. When you just go back to Rome, which is a long time ago, In Rome, for 1 ounce of gold, you could have bought yourself a beautiful outfit, your robe, your clothing, all the finest of material. You could have bought yourself your belt and your wrap and your sandals for 1 ounce of gold. Well, today, if you sell 1 ounce of gold, you can buy a custom suit, your belt, and nice pair of shoes. You see, gold has always held and maintained value. And believe it or not, over the last 20 years, if you just would have invested in gold, you would have outperformed the stock market and Warren Buffett significantly. Now, not counting individual stocks, some of them went ballistic, although they've crashed pretty good since then. But gold has always maintained its buying power. It just has. I know it's boring. It's something you just buy and hold, but it maintains the value. So when you go to priceandgold.com, what you can do is you can see, and it's a little complicated because it's actually real data and technical, but the point is gold, if you own gold as your savings, or silver pretty much, but gold as your savings, you will have seen over time that it continues to buy the same good. Same with silver and gas, for instance. Back in the day, silver and the dollar were equal. 1 ounce of silver and $1 equal, because the dollar, paper dollar, used to be called a silver certificate, for those that can remember that. And this was in the late 60s, early 70s. They were equal. They both bought about 3 gallons of gas. Gas was probably about 30 cents, I think, around that time. And so they divorced. They separated. Silver just became an industrial metal / monetary, but it's not monetary officially. And then the paper dollar became this Federal Reserve note. Well, today, all these years later, today, if I were to sell my silver, not only can I buy the same 3 gallons of gas, I can buy 6 gallons of gas. 6. So here my buying power over all these years has actually doubled in owning silver. And now take that paper dollar out of your wallet, and how many gallons can you buy? Not even a quarter of a gallon when it used to buy you 3, you see? So all it really does is show you that the paper dollar is being diluted in value to the point where it doesn't buy you the same. And that's a big deal to understand. This is a reflection that even cheaper prices, if the true gold and silver prices weren't suppressed by central banks, which I'm okay with, and you should be for now. I know for those that invested in it, they're kind of like, come on, let's get going, but just be patient, because the system is breaking down. And when the true price of gold and silver actually come about, which it's going to be forced because of the BRICS. You see, the BRICS are going to bring into the world their own currency. It's going to be backed by gold and commodities. I know for a fact, and I'm not going to get into it today, but our government is feverishly running around the deserts in our country on public lands looking for gold mines. And so it's a very interesting thing. They know what's coming, and it's best that we do too, because this is how we can protect ourselves. But what this tells us is that inflation isn't really caused by problems with goods and services or supply chains. Those are kind of the scapegoats. It's the currency. It's the actual Federal Reserve note that has been printed so much so that is diluted in its value, in its ability to buy. There's been a steady bleed on the middle class by the global financial elite. Now, this goes back decades, so it's not something new, but you think back in the day, I grew up middle class in Detroit, so I truly understand. We had a phenomenal life. We would at least take 1 or 2 trips a year. We lived in a small little ranch home in the suburb. I mean, it was a decent life. It's not like we were rich, but today, the same standard that we lived back then in middle class, today would be considered upper middle class, if not upper class. Most people just don't have that standard now. This has been a bleed on that group, and that was always a really decent group. It was, you could work hard and you can make a good income and have some of the luxuries of life. This is a big deal because the currency is losing its value quickly. Now, this is going into acceleration mode right now. This is where I'm getting at, is we're getting near the end of a cycle. It's probably why the fourth turning is right around the corner. If you haven't heard of that, you may want to do some research. The fourth turning is a phenomenal 80-year cycle of American prophecy, and we're within 2 years of that happening. But this is going into acceleration mode, and we're towards the end of a system, and the bankers know it. This is why they rolled out BlackRock's Going Direct Reset at the Jackson Hole in August of 2019. And by the way, that's when the banks were collapsing in the fall of 2019. And then conveniently, some virus out of a laboratory shows up. Now, this was Event 201 in October of 2019, exactly the time frame, folks, when the banks were collapsing. It's kind of interesting. And then followed by the whole, COVID issue. The orchestrated war in Ukraine and the attacks on energy and food infrastructure was designed to obfuscate the fact that the dollar is dying from the general public. The bankers are now doing a controlled demolition of the old post-Bretton Woods monetary system. They want to herd us into a central bank digital currency. And this is where it gets, people must say no. What can we do, people ask? Start talking about it and say no. Share this podcast. This is going to be a good one. The bankers know it, and they're doing this controlled demolition. The central bank digital currency, they're not currencies. It's basically putting people like, I don't want to get into their names because I don't want to give them credit for anything. Bad people in charge of where, when, and what you can spend your money on. It will be programmable money. In other words, a high-tech slavery system. We, the people of the United States, will be high-tech slaves. There will be no anonymous transaction, no flipping a 20 to somebody for doing something for you. Nothing will exist like that. You will not have cash. Every piece of data will be stored and fed into an artificial intelligence system to control the world's economy and your behavior. And this is where it gets interesting. This is why we've got to learn to talk about it, and we need to share it with others. Here's what's going to happen. The price of things will continue to go higher and higher. They are going to inflate or try to inflate this debt away, hence why gold and silver are valuable. Until the moment comes where they call the aha moment. Once that occurs in the public, where they begin to exchange currency for real goods, they're going to know. Then there's going to be the community already begun in process, by the way. It's going to happen at a much larger scale because big institution actors are going to kick into overdrive. And there's going to be a run on precious metals like gold and silver. And it's going to ensue while the treasury yields are spiking out of control and the cost of food and energy is going to skyrocket. And remember, this is by design. As soon as Sloppy Joe got in, they put this into action. They shut down refineries' capacity to make diesel fuel. They didn't put permits in place. They are lying to you about everything. It is unbelievable gaslighting like I've never seen. This is called a crack up and boom. Eventually, they'll roll out the central bank digital currency as a lifeboat when the economy collapses. It's coming, folks. Just don't underestimate it, because if you prepare properly or help those around you prepare, we have a chance. This is a moment they'll herd you into slavery and lock the door behind you. You'll be grateful at first because it'll be like a pittance, like a stymie money, and then you'll realize what happened. That's what I think it's important. Wake up now. Because at first you're going to be thankful, and then you're going to realize, whoa, we just got duped big time. This is the moment Well, I'm not going to be grateful because the fiat petrodollar that you know now is based on America's global kind of like leverage. It's what we were using. We were using energy, all priced in dollars, as our leverage. It forced the global sale of energy commodities to be settled in the dollar. This gave the dollar legitimacy in the world. This is what's been going on in the last 30, 40 years. Why you keep hearing that whole concept of American dream. It gave us this dominance over all the other currencies, despite the massive amount of money printing the dollar's been doing. This is disqualifying typically, but nobody caught on. But now it's cracked. And I don't think it's like cracking an egg. You can't put it back in. And once this war in Ukraine happened, boom, there it is. So historically, printing like this, what it did is it exported inflation to other countries rather than being here at home. So we didn't realize it at first here in America, but then, of course, Sloppy Joe and the left, they literally monetized trillions of dollars within the last couple of years, and it just basically blew open the door. So now you can't hide it. And that's a big deal. So it's not, and now it's no longer not contained at home. This is a luxury. It further compounds our financial dominance despite America being an effective hollow or what we call a de-industrialized country. That's why President Trump was trying to make America great. He was trying to bring the manufacturing back here. They've hollowed our nation out. They've carved us out. We no longer have the greatness of manufacturing and viability we used to. Now we're in a multipolar world. It would have been a good time to get back to manufacturing. We should be manufacturing our own microchips. We should be doing our own drugs. But see, the reason they wanted to go global, one, they knew they were printing the dollar too much, and it is expensive to do here. And so they were going to cheaper nations to get things manufactured to hide the inflation, to hide the destruction of the dollar. And now you throw the Ukraine war into it and the rise of China and BRICS. The dollar is left basically holding the bag on the critical foundation underneath it. And the energy dominance that it has is no longer under American control. See, we were dominating the global energy by having it priced in dollars, and we lost control of it. I mentioned this years ago when China did a massive billion-dollar deal in Saudi Arabia with refineries. I said they're coming for the petrodollar. I'm on record on our TV program. Russia and China were systematically dismantling the petrodollar, and they have succeeded. This isn't good. The Ukraine war is accelerating this process rapidly and accelerating the inevitable U.S. domestic political revolution that probably did take place in this election. It looks like Republicans are sweeping into House and Senate. But the bigger, I think, story was the fact that the Republicans got 6 million more votes than Democrats, but such an odd situation on why there's not more elected officials, and we all know what that means. Probably the reason our program is titled Rigged Against You. This is going to have a massive shift. This is the fourth turning. This is what the elites are afraid of. Central bank digital currencies are an attempt to shift. This is really big, wrapping it up. Shift people from a soon-to-be failed capitalist, and here's the difference. We were a worker reward model. You work hard, you got paid well. With lots of individuals, lateral movement, and personal freedom. Now they're trying to take us to a behavioral model with little individual freedom at all. You behave the right way. This is where the digital ID, digital currency comes in, and all you got to do is look at China for that. If you behave the right way, you will have reward. This is an attempt to contain any future political unrest in America as the dollar collapses and dangerous classes rise. They knew this was an issue in the 60s. They knew this was going to happen. This was all plotted through the Trilateral Commission, and it was a paper titled The Crisis of Democracy. These are the elites that are trying to run, well, many think they already are, running this nation. Their solution, according to the Trilateral paper, de-democratization. Think about that. Which is why we see more centralized and authoritarian governments around the country with each presidency. Russia is now foregoing its future outside of the dollar. America is actually going the other direction, which is such an irony. We sit there and claim Russia is totalitarian, authoritarian. We are the ones becoming, and they are becoming a little more free. This is what they're going to try to do to contain the chaos when the people start waking up. It's not good. They are going to destroy, which they already have. I'm from Detroit, so I'm a perfect knowledgeable one on this one because I've seen Detroit at its greatness, and go look at it now. They are going to destroy our domestic industry. They're going to continue to outsource all the jobs and manufacturing, and they're going to crush the competition, making the people dependent on welfare. The BRICS know exactly what's coming. They know the West had this in plan. What's unfortunate, well, Europe's already a laydown. The Europeans are worthless. They have lost. And I don't trust any European in that respect because they have let their countries do this. America, Canada too. Now I know there's plenty in Canada, good people that are not, but look what they did to the truckers. Look what Trudeau's doing now when it comes to handguns. America is the last stand. It is the red line, the line in the sand. If we lose America, the world will go Marxist, totalitarian, slave state, communist, and it will never go back. If we can't say no now, we never will have a chance. And if you care, you will share it because it's not about you. It's about your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. It's about the future of a great nation fought by great people to build amazing values. Yeah, sure, we've had our trouble like every nation has. But again, America is the only place where every single person has a chance. I don't care what the left says. All you got to do is look at Dr. Ben Carson from the hood in Detroit, and he grew up in the hood where he should have been dead or in jail, but he had a phenomenal mother, and here he turns out to be the most unbelievable brain surgeon in the world, first to dissect Siamese twins, and his brother literally became a rocket scientist. In America, everyone had a chance. Don't say otherwise, because then it's just you're lazy and you're not reading enough and you're not having enough faith in yourself and probably not enough faith in the Lord above. This is a big deal. The BRICS are definitely making the move and they're taking over the world. So stay focused. This is one podcast I'd probably spread to friends. I know people are apathetic. They have a lack of concern, but they really better wake up or one day they'll go, what just happened? So until next week, God bless each and every one of you.
With all of the recent changes in the political and financial markets, there has never been a better time than right now to invest in silver and gold. When governments simply print billions of dollars in paper money in hopes of solving financial shortfalls, you know that it is time to buy and hold assets of true and lasting value. Free information is available to you right now by calling 888-747-3309. Whether you are a new investor or you're interested in preserving the value of your retirement accounts, we make it easy for you to make smart decisions for your financial future. The specialists at Cornerstone are here to serve you, work to satisfy your retirement goals, and communicate with respect. Call us right now at 888-747-3309. That's 888-747-3309. Or visit us online at cornerstoneassetmetals.com. That's cornerstoneassetmetals.com.